Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in the nation's commercial net center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzonga. Let's bring you up to speed with the big happenings in politics and in the polity. Let's get started with the headlines. President Bola Tinubu reels out national security emergency measures to tackle increasing spate of attacks, killings, and kidnappings in the country. Sadly, Anglican priest Edwin Archie, who was captured alongside his wife in Kaduna State, dies in the den of abductors. The church is confirmed. Indeed, troubling times for our nation as we battle a heightened level of insecurity, including killings, kidnappings, and abductions. Now, the priest in charge of Ebenezer Anglican Church, Ngwan Majoro, in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State, Reverend Edwin Archie, was kidnapped by bandits on October the 28th, has reportedly died in captivity. Reverend Archie and his wife were abducted from their residence in Nissi village near the Kaduna refinery and taken to an unknown location. Days after the abduction, the kidnappers contacted their family to demand a ransom of 600 million naira. Confirming the incident in a statement, the Anglican Church described the death of Reverend Archie as a painful loss to the entire diocese, the clergy, the church, the family, and all who were blessed by his faithful ministry, humble spirit, and unwavering devotion to the service of God. The church also prayed for the release of his wife. Our thoughts and our prayers are with his family. That's what we can say for now, and we hope that his wife will be released eventually. These are very trying times for our country. And still talking about security, this time the Senate has passed a resolution classifying kidnapping as an act of terrorism, stipulating an amendment to the Terrorism Act be made to impose the maximum penalty of death. The resolution was made during plenary, when national security was a prominent subject of discussion. Our correspondent Gloria Mozuke has the reports.
The subject of insecurity clearly dominated the minds of lawmakers as they reconvened for plenary following several days of a security summit. In a motion raised by Senator Lola Ashiru on the maze of kidnappings, particularly in 3 states, including Niger and Benue, lawmakers embarked on what turned out to be a heated debate.
Why Nigerians are celebrating the fact that no life was lost on the side of those who were kept in captivity and who regained their freedom, Nigerians have argued, show us that a bullet was shot to regain this freedom.
The governor of Kebbi said that somebody ordered troops out and people were kidnapped. Till today, nobody in Nigeria knows what happened. Who withdrew the troops to put all these children in jeopardy? Then you make an example of him. That is how a country is run.
The debate became even more robust.
I am troubled by the conflicting judgment by various high court judges, where the law says act of terrorism, if convicted, shall attract death penalty. No judge has a right to pronounce less than that.
I think it is time for Nigeria to allow us to be carrying arms. The CEC needs to look at its military architectural design around him.
Let me make my view.
However, an uproar occurred when Senator Siriake Dixon, in his argument, made accusations.
Our democracy, right before our eyes, is being rubbished. Our country, right before our eyes, is losing prestige and respect, and is endangered by the day. And I want to briefly object to the way and manner some of the comments from the other side have been on this very serious issue. I'm coming, let me make my views, please.
You learn, but which other side? There is
no. Please, I respect this. Please, let's not talk.
Refusing to back down, his microphone is then cut off.
Be guided from the chair. The reality is that this affects all of us. So there's nothing like this side or that side. The same community that those children were returned, they've gone there to go and kidnap 11 people, including a pregnant woman. So we must realize that we are under attack. Those in support that this, the death of General Oba and the circumstances surrounding his death be added to the committee for investigation. Say aye. Those again say nay. The ayes have it.
Other resolutions include the dissolution of standing committees on Air Force and National Security and Intelligence with immediate effect and the reconstitution of new ones within 1 week. The Senate to undertake diplomatic engagements with the United States to address the escalating security challenges. The Senate leadership to meet with President Tinubu to brief him on the resolutions, and the Senate to amend the Terrorism Prevention Act, classifying kidnapping as a terrorist offense, punishable by the death penalty. In the meantime, President Bola Tinubu has forwarded 3 non-career ambassadorial nominees representing Ogun, Jigawa and Oyo states to the Senate for confirmation. The Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs is expected to review the nominations and report back to the chamber within 1 week. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
President Bola Tinubu has declared a security emergency in the country following recent security threats. The president, in a release he personally signed, also orders the army and the police to recruit more personnel. According to him, the police are to recruit additional 20,000 officers to bring the total to 50, that's 50,000, with authorization for the force to use various National Youth Service Corps camps for training exercise. He says the police officers being withdrawn from very important persons as the VIPs in the country should undergo crash training to debrief them and deliver more efficient police services when deployed to security challenge areas of the country. President Tinubu also directs the Department of State Services to immediately deploy all the forest guards already trained to flush out the terrorists and bandits lurking in forests across the country. He says the agency also has a directive, or is directed to recruit more men to man the forest. He commends the courage and sacrifice of the leaders and rank and file of the armed forces, charging them to remain resolute, restore peace across the country, and to uphold the highest standards of discipline and integrity, plus other things the president said as far as these issues are concerned. Let's bring in our guest, Mr. Kabiru Adamu. Dr. Kabiru Adamu is the MD CEO of Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. He joins us virtually. Dr. Kabiru, thank you so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure, Jeffrey. Good afternoon.
It's quite hard to know where to start from because everywhere we turn, there's something to talk about. Sadly, that reverend, we understand, was kidnapped with his wife as passed, but is dead. We don't know whether he was killed or he died because of complication. I don't have all the details, but it's quite a terrible situation. But maybe let's start from the president's declaration, or what they call security emergencies that's been declared by the president. One of the highlights has to do with more boots on the ground. Others have to do with no collusion, no compromise on the side of the military. There was a part that has to do with open grazing issue to stop, and then the people that are here that should embrace ranching. I'm sure you've seen that statement. What do you make of it? Anything hopeful, anything concrete, anything definitive?
Thank you, Jeffrey. We start by joining millions of Nigerians and our friends across the world in condoling with the families of the clergymen that died in Kaduna. No doubt it's a reflection of the types of occurrences that are happening across the country where family members lose their loved ones, and we just see it as the statistics and we move on. So my heart goes out to his family, the community he represents, and that of several others too who have lost their lives and who unfortunately continue to lose their lives. The presidential statement yesterday that mentioned national security emergency, I think is a reflection of the fact that over the last few weeks, since President Trump went on Truth Social and mentioned Nigeria, We've seen some form of recognition by the political class of the very dire nature of our security circumstances. And this is something we've been discussing for years, actually, trying to bring their attention to it. And if finally it is President Trump that is making them more conscious and intentional, then I think it's a very welcome development. However, we're a bit concerned as someone who understands what a national security enterprise is and what is required to make a national security enterprise effective. I'm bothered about, both the statement by the president and then the discussions in the National Assembly. They seem to me to be in piecemeals, Jeffrey. The security sector reform that we require to make our national security enterprise effective. I'm not seeing anything. As an example, if the president wants to make this effective, he can declare war on banditry and declare war on terrorism. Now, that is a direct and consequential statement. It allows the National Assembly to endorse his statement. It allows the military to know that the president has declared war on these two things, and that will now empower them to go after them. But when the statement of a state of emergency in security is mentioned, and then all I'm hearing is recruitment, that I know would take 1 year for that recruitment to be effective. First, you have to advertise, and if there is no disagreement in the case of the police between the Nigeria Police Force and the Police Commission, the Service Commission, then maybe it will go speedily, and in 6 months we'll be able to see the recruitment and the training will follow. So it will take a bit of a time. And then if you go to the military, the process of recruitment, sending them to the depot, that would take time. But if a war is declared, we would have empowered both the military to go in very clear terms to go after these bad guys and give us results. So I'm hoping that what we will be discussing will be a security sector reform that would give us the kind of national security enterprise that we need.
So let's get straight to it. What kinds of reforms are we looking at? If you look at the sub-nationals, the southern governors met in Abeokuta yesterday, although they are politicians, somehow in the midst of all the sensitivity of what's going on, they found a way to bring in politics, talking about endorsing the president and southern presidency. I think in my view, it was absolutely insensitive, but that's another kettle of fish. They are pushing strongly that the urgency of state police is as urgent as yesterday. So if you talk about this reform, so let's unpack it. In the immediate term, if you were to sit with the president right now, what would you be telling him? And in the long term?
That he should convene as soon as possible a National Security Council, an expanded one. Jeffrey, we've got leaders across the 3 levels of government, the federal, the state, and the local government. We're not hearing the voice of the local government, so I'll restrict my conversation to the federal and the state. The discussions we're hearing at the moment are in discordant tunes, and I think there is a need for our leadership to sit in one room, convene an expanded National Security Council, where you have representation from the National Assembly. You would also have representation of our governors, at least from the 6 geopolitical zones. Discuss a pathway, including the state police. Because my worry is on the 29th of November, over this coming weekend, the northern governors will meet. And the likelihood is that they will come out with a statement, probably opposing state police or even agreeing to it. Now we'll move on as if nothing has happened. But what if they have that National Security Council and not the Economic Council? Because the Economic Council is an economic council. Let's have the National Security Council discuss security. And then that council, that meeting will come out with a unified position by both the federal and the state government. And then that unified position can be communicated to the National Assembly. At least we would have moved ahead. We've been discussing the issue of state police for almost 2 years now. It's contained in the Renewed Hope agenda of the president. He's been very clear and emphatic about his position on it. But 2 years down the road, we haven't moved. And yet people are dying. In my company, we know that almost about 10,000 people have died from January to this month of November. That is not acceptable. The conversation should move from planning to actual implementation, and the Security Council is the best place to reach some form of consensus, a political consensus, so that that consensus is now put into actionable items by the administrative machinery that drives the National Security Council. I don't need to remind anyone listening that the highest body for security conversations that we have in the country, the National Security Council, and that council has not sat down in months. I think it has only sat down once since this administration came into effect. So that would be my honest and sincere advice to Mr. President. It will help reduce the discordant tunes that we're hearing. As Nigerians, we need direction, we need leadership, we need the political class to galvanize us and give us a sense of direction. And I think having that kind of conversation in that type of council will help give us that direction. We can discuss perhaps the role that the National Assembly would play in all of this, but I think for now, it is the executive arm that needs to galvanize us and give us that direction. And we'll go behind and support all of this.
All right, Dr. Adamu, let me ask you to maybe play the devil's advocate and maybe hazard a guess. Because a Brigadier General was killed, and we just moved on. What could have happened before that general was murdered? If you can hazard that, right, play the devil's advocate. And the issue of the reverend that was killed as well, what could have happened? And how can maybe his wife be freed? So those two, help us unpack it. You are the intelligence man here. Let's walk through your mind and see what would have played out. So
first off, I think we should take a pause and maybe not reach any conclusions regarding what happened to the Brigadier General. Based on what we're hearing, there is no confirmation with regards to, his whether he's alive or he's dead. What is clear and confirmed is that he is in the hands of the enemy, and I think we should be very mindful how we kind of discuss the issue, because of course we're dealing with sensibilities that will affect life and all of that. Now, having said that, the vulnerabilities that exist within the security space are vulnerabilities that will need to be addressed in a security sector reform. I'll just give you an example. Our security sector, including the military, communicate on GSM. And any expert in counter surveillance and counter espionage would tell you that the GSM is as vulnerable as you shouting in a market. Once you are speaking on the GSM, the possibility that others can pick up and hear what you are saying is extremely high. So that's vulnerability number one, and it could have happened in this instance. Number two is the possibility of a fifth columnist within the ranks of any of our security apparatus. That too would need to be addressed critically by security sector reform. And I don't want to go deeper into that, but then there are huge issues regarding the possibility of fifth columnists within our security sector, and it's been documented. We need to address that as quickly as possible. These are all the ingredients of the security sector reform that I did mention earlier on. With regards to the second part of your question, we don't know the circumstances yet under which the clergyman may have died. He's not so young. He may have died from natural causes. If they are exposed, the places where these bandits hold them are places that don't have medical facilities. They're usually in thick forested areas. And for someone who is not used to living in those conditions, he could be exposed to medical conditions that could lead to his death. So irrespective of what the outcome is, it speaks to the fact that we need to improve security so that any Nigerian who is law-abiding is not subjected to those type of circumstances, unfortunately.
Just to say that the president had actually confirmed the death of the Brigadier General in a statement. I'm trying to get to that statement. As soon as I get it, I'll pull it up. But the president had actually, because we're also hazarding the guess. Is he dead? Is he not dead? Until the president in his statement.
Jeffrey, I'm sorry to say that statement where the president mentioned that death. That statement, I don't know what happened to Mr. Bayo Anonuga when he uttered that statement. I don't know whether it was vetted, but there were lots of gaps in that statement. And I think the president should be mindful of such statement. I mean, in that statement, we are told that our president was depressed. We are also told that there was intelligence before the attack in Birnin Kebbi. That statement did not tell us what was going to be done to address the gap. If there was intelligence before the attack on Birnin Kebbi, the statement should have gone ahead to say this is what the presidency would do to deal with whoever it was that received that intelligence and failed to act. So I think something was wrong with that statement.
Yeah, no, I'm not just talking, I'm talking about the one with the Brigadier General. Yes, I know you've identified some gaps in all of that, but confirming the deaths is what I'm talking about. That's the authority. The Commander-in-Chief is the authority we quote as to the death of the Brigadier General. But moving on, let's talk about the issue of bandits. Why hasn't the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria designated bandits as terrorists?
So under the Buhari administration, bandits were designated as terrorists, two categories of bandits, and it was actually gazetted. If you go to the website of the presidency, I think you would see that it was gazetted and actually published openly. What they call Yen Bindiga, and then I think Yen Tadda, the then Attorney General, who did pronounce that he went to a competent court of jurisdiction and got the court to sanction that, and then of course went ahead to gazette it. But then this is the challenge in the Nigerian context. Again, another ingredient for security sector reform. We did that, but we did not follow through with the provisions of the Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Act by identifying who this Mbindiga and Mbanga is. Because today, if you ask me who are they, I don't know. I know the various Kachalas. I know, name them, all of the Kachalas, the ones that have been killed and the ones that are alive. But then do I know whether they belong to this group, Mbindiga or Mbanga? I don't. So the government should have gone ahead in that prescription and according to the provisions of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act, identify who these bandits are that have been subsumed under these two groups, publish their names, and then include them in the sanctions list so that as a Nigerian, I know who they are and I'm able to support the government in the implementation of that provision as far as it affects the prescription of those two groups, bandit groups as it were.
Yeah, because we're talking to a lawyer this morning. He said under the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, nothing remotely talks about banditry in that sense. So that's why we're looking at all the papers and all the books, whether that word should be expressed. We don't know the sub-element of what constitutes banditry. We just know the outcome of what they do, which is dastardly and very wicked of them to do. So if they are now so brazen that they are on rampage, then the Nigerian state must rise up to do what it has to do in defending the people. But let me quickly jump on this one as we begin to wind down. We understand, look at what is going on already. We see Guinea-Bissau, maybe another coup has happened yet again because the military has actually taken over. The usual flurry of condemnation has started. We will understand our former president, Goodluck Jonathan, is trapped in that country. Is this another failure of the system? Should we be worried?
Yes, I think so. No one is in doubt about the political circumstances of Guinea-Bissau, a narco state that has experienced series of coups in the past. We know, for instance, that the drug cartels are interested in some form of political dominance within the region. We've seen what the now unseated president has done in terms of his attempt to circumvent the democratic processes. And of course, we've also seen the fact that the election results were being contested. And then unfortunately, we had ECOWAS, AU, did send monitoring groups. And as usual, the opportunity, for instance, to make very clear statements that could have perhaps woken the now unseated president was lost. And where we are at the moment, like they say, if we fail to provide systems for democratic transition, unfortunately, these types of events happen. And I think this is what happened. Again, we should not exclude the influence of the narcotic players, especially Latin American drug cartels that have shown significant influence in that state. Given what has happened, I think it's absolutely important, especially since we have a former president, Nigerian president, who is now trapped in that country. Nigeria needs to make, I know we've made a statement, but we need to go beyond that statement and call for, the safeguarding of not just the president, but the members of that delegation that are currently trapped. And we should, of course, negotiate their extraction.
My final question will be, and this is a question I always ask you, and I may not stop asking because of the rising incidence of what we are feeling in parts of our country. Is it too early not to start, or let me put it differently, isn't it time for us to brace up and say, maybe in some parts of our country, we need to allow people to start bearing arms?
I honestly am not in support of the liberalization of arms, as it were. I don't think it would help. We are faced with a challenge, an identity-based challenge. If you speak or you delve into the security challenges in the country, this issue of identity comes up. And I hate to say what would happen if we arm everyone is that innocent persons may be targeted and killed just because of their identity. If on social media you see that, in real life you see that. And so the protection of individuals, especially in these circumstances where the law enforcement agencies have not shown enough capability. Instead of that, Jeffrey, what we need to do is to strengthen our institutions and strengthen the rule of law. Again, we started this conversation and I mentioned the need to comply with the provisions of the Constitution, convene the National Security Council, but then more importantly, hold accountable members of the security sector. We have 42 of them, Jeffrey. Each and every one of them should be held accountable. They have mandates. The mandates are very clear, from law enforcement as provided by the police, internal security, to border protection as provided by the Immigration Service and Customs, to aspects around justice. If we pick each and every one of them and then start holding them accountable through strengthening their procedures, I think we will get better results than if we go back to the Hobbesian existence where we give everybody weapons to say protect themselves. So that means, for instance, if I'm able to get a more superior weapon and for some reasons, Jeffrey, I don't like you, I'll just come out after you. Who is going to protect you from me if I have a more superior weapon? And again, let's not forget the level of profiling and stigmatization that is in Nigeria at the moment. I think the solution is more around compliance with the provisions of our Constitution, our laws, strengthening the rule of law. It will probably get us a better outcome than the liberalization of weapons.
Yeah, in the coming days, we'll continue to keep the conversation in the front burner, Dr. Kabiru. The reason we're asking these questions to see, I like the way one of the dailies captured this, because we're seeing this, is it released? Were they released? Were they rescued? Did the government pay ransom? We don't know. Because the reason why we're asking that question is the people who are perpetrating this evil, where are they? But we're getting the people they captured released, so coming back home. So we need to be clear, and they are becoming even more brazen, carrying guns to all sort of whatever peace meeting they call it. And it's just becoming, the average Nigerian citizen is losing confidence in the system, and that's what we have to check. But I wanted to show you, Dr. Kabiru, that statement by the president just before I let you go. So see at the bottom, as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, I am depressed with the tragic death of our soldiers and officers on active duty. May God comfort the families of Brigadier General Musa Uba and other fallen heroes. So I know you particularly don't like this statement because of the depressing element of the president's statement, in your view. But I must thank you, Dr. Kabiru. We'll have you yet again as these things unfold. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure, and I hope that the next time we speak, it will be more cheering news. Unfortunately, the last few times it's been very depressing news. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the prayer of everyone. Thanks for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzoma. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.